The 3TB PS5 is here, but it's expensive. Wipeout is coming back. Did Battlefield 2042 just get delayed? And does God of War have a new director? So if you line up all the franchises that Sony has at this point, they have a ton of great stuff that I feel like you would call top tier. But one of the games that's kind of fallen by the wayside is Wipeout. I remember when the PSP came out, I had a game called Wipeout Pure, and I played that game every day, and I was so bad at it. But then a year later, I went back and just somehow knew how to play it. It was like one of those things where you're on a hard boss one night and you just can't beat it. You're fighting them over and over again, and then you go to bed to sleep on it, and then the next morning you just jump down on your PlayStation and you go, I'm gonna beat it, and you beat it first try. It was something like that happened with Wipeout, so that's stuck in my brain forever. But it looks like Wipeout is coming back, and honestly, this was an announcement that got me extremely excited, and then I saw what it was, and I was very disappointed because this new Wipeout game that's happening, while it looks like just good old Wipeout, it's coming to mobile phones. I don't want to trash too hard on mobile games or anything because I used to play a lot of them, especially when the App Store came out and we were getting like full-fledged mobile games that were like console games on the go. I remember Dead Space for iOS was just a new Dead Space game, and it played just like Dead Space. It was incredible. EA actually made a lot of awesome iPhone games, just like side note tangent right there. But now they're so free to play, monetized, you've got gacha stuff, just crap like that that's really bogging down the entire system. And now that I know this is a Wipeout game from Sony coming to a phone, I feel like it's gonna be the same old stuff that we've seen on every other game. But I want to give Sony the benefit of the doubt here because when they announced that they were making mobile games, they said they were going to be high quality, and we actually honestly don't know a whole lot about this new Wipeout game, even though we've seen gameplay. So I think we kind of just got to wait until 2022 when they release it. One of the biggest games coming out this year just got delayed, and it's Battlefield 2042. Now, originally this game was supposed to come out on October 11th, and it just got pushed a full month to November 19th. Now, I gotta be real, this isn't the most disappointing delay for me. One that just happened that really bummed me out was Dying Light 2, which got delayed from December till February, and that's bad for a lot of reasons. First of all, Dying Light 2 has already been in the oven for a very long time, and I'm glad they're delaying it just to polish the game up, but February of 2022 is one of the most packed Februaries of all time. So I hope a lot of the games that are around this new Dying Light release date get delayed because I want that game to do well. But going back to the game we were talking about, Battlefield 2042, I don't really know how much this is going to affect that game's sales. It's not like when they put Titanfall 2 basically a week apart from Battlefield 1, and Battlefield 1 totally cannibalized Titanfall 2's sales. I feel like the difference here is that Halo isn't totally competing with Battlefield. I feel like Battlefield's gonna have its Battlefield fans, and Halo Infinite's going to have its Halo Infinite fans, and everyone's going to be happy. Like, they're different kinds of games, even though they're first-person shooters. I also think it helps that they're different companies making them. I'm never gonna get over the fact that Xbox published a Game of the Year contender and the best reviewed PS5 game of the year that's an exclusive to the PlayStation 5, but here we are with Deathloop sitting there on the PlayStation 5 and not on the Xbox. But there is a funny thing going on where the main star of the game, like the guy who plays Colt, can't actually get a PS5 to play his own game. So over on the Deathloop Twitter, they had the guy who plays Colt named Jason Kelly do an ad for the game to tell people that they should go out and buy it. And then at the end, he dropped a line where he was like, yeah, if anyone could get me a PS5 and Deathloop, that would be awesome, because he doesn't have it, which is crazy. Like, this is the star of the game. He's on the cover. You see him. It's not like a first-person shooter where you never see the main character. When you load into Black Reef between levels, like, you see him just sitting at a workbench, and this guy can't even get a PS5. Sony, this is one of your biggest first-party exclusives this year. Hook up the guy with the PS5. I know they're scarce, but like, you gotta have at least one lying around. And if you haven't managed to get your hands on a PS5 yet, make sure you follow Stay PSReady on Twitter, because I retweet all of the like links to PS Now and Target and Amazon when the PS5s are about to go up. It'll give you just that little bit of edge. One of the bigger initiatives going on at Sony right now is this whole thing called One Sony, where PlayStation is going to work in tandem with Sony Pictures and try and make it so their games come out at the same time as movies, or vice versa. This has already been kicked off with stuff like The Last of Us TV show, which is happening over at HBO, and we also know there's a Ghost of Tsushima movie that's coming very soon. But if a new rumor from Jeff Grubb turns out to be true, they're going to be hammering this even harder harder in the coming years, starting with Twisted Metal. So if you guys don't know, Twisted Metal started way back on the original PlayStation, and it's basically a car combat game that's pretty violent and really cool. I remember the first one I played was a remake, I think, of the original that came out on the PSP. It had extremely long load times and it had really fun multiplayer. I used to go to the library after school and play it every day. The highlight of the franchise was a sequel named Twisted Metal Black, and then it went all the way up to the PS3 where a reboot came out, but it didn't really light the sales world on fire, and we haven't seen anything from Twisted Metal since, until Sony confirmed that they are working on a TV series of the game, and now it looks like, according to Jeff Grubb, they're going to be focusing on making sure that when they have a big TV series or movie or something like that coming out on the media side, they also have a game ready to come out with it. So after I recorded that story about a new Twisted Metal game and the TV show that's coming, some big stuff happened related to the TV show. They cast Anthony Mackie as John Doe, who's a milkman who has no memory of his prior life, but he wants a better life in the future because the Twisted Metal tournament basically grants you one wish. I don't really know what they're gonna do with the lore in this show though, so I'm gonna stop talking about it. Yeah, getting Anthony Mackie involved with this show is super smart. The guy's Captain America now. He's a charismatic, funny, great actor. I feel like he's gonna do a great job as the main character in Twisted Metal. I just wanna know who they're gonna cast as Sweet Tooth, because I'm just curious how they're gonna do that character, because Sweet Tooth has fire for hair. I don't know if that's gonna be CGI or if they're just gonna go the cheap route and make him have just like, you know, like just orange hair or something like that. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of questions that need to be answered here. My pick for Sweet Tooth though, gotta go with my boy Paul Giamatti. I think he'd be a great pick for Sweet Tooth. There's still no word yet on when this show is coming, but they have like everyone casted. It's being written by the guys who wrote Deadpool. You've got people like Will Arnett involved. Anthony Mackie's character is going to be the main character, and he's going to be fighting through different cars and stuff like that. I feel like this honestly has some pretty good odds of actually being decent, which I hope I don't eat my words on that one, but I don't know. I just got a good feeling about this. And also the HBO version of The Last of Us, I also got a good feeling about that. I hope this Sony TV initiative starts working out for them, because if these shows bomb, I feel like it could probably affect the games in a negative way, and none of us want that, because the games are what is important. So with that big PlayStation showcase that just happened where God of War Ragnarok was finally unveiled, we actually got quite a few updates on the game after the showcase happened, and we found out that instead of directing this game, Cory Barlog is actually directing Santa Monica Studios' next game, and Eric Williams, a new director, will be taking the helm on God of War Ragnarok. People were kind of speculating on this ever since the PS5 and this game were announced, because Cory Barlog has never said whether or not he was directing the new God of War, and I feel like if he was, he would have immediately said it, because that's a pretty exciting game to come back for, if you ask me. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but this is actually going to be the last game in the whole Norse mythology section of Kratos' story. They said it's because these God of War games take 4 to 5 years to develop, and waiting another 4 to 5 years for the end of the trilogy that they would have made initially just seemed like too long of a wait. So they're just gonna wrap it up in this Ragnarok story. They didn't say whether or not though they're gonna have Kratos explore a new mythology, but guys, like, come on, you saw how much God of War sold. Kratos is back in the limelight. They've got so many places they could go after Norse mythology that I feel like it's a no-brainer to just keep Kratos going. It is absolutely insane that they were able to revitalize Kratos, because if you look at where that character started and what we had with the original God of War, those were like basically the most machismo games that you just don't see anymore, and Kratos was kind of a parody of himself by the time Ascension came out, and this reboot kept everything in his lore there, but modernized it and made it cool in a way that just made it feel new again, which is something you never really see in games or even movies. It's an extremely hard thing to do, so I'm glad that they're going to probably continue after God of War Ragnarok. So the saga of Splitgate continues to get even better. So a lot of people were thinking that Sony might want to pick up the developers of Splitgate after this game completely blew up on their console, because I don't know if you guys have heard of this one, but it's essentially Halo meets Portal, and it plays exactly like it sounds. This game has only gotten better since the last time we talked about it. I played a lot with Dustin, my friend who's been featured here on the channel a couple times, and it's just such a good chill game to wind down a long work day. You know, you don't really have to pay attention to it too much if you don't want to. The fact that there's bots in there, I'm still back and forth on that, but it gives you something easy to kill, you know what I mean? But the new big update with Splitgate is that the studio that made it, 1047 Games, just got $100 million in funding to continue development on this game as an independent developer. And guys, when you look at the industry right now and you see how everything's being consolidated, like THQ Nordic is buying up every studio they they possibly can, alongside Microsoft buying up a ton of other big studios and Sony buying Insomniac, and they're buying Firesprite and all these other studios. The consolidation is going to be a problem as the future goes on. So it's really good to see an indie studio not immediately get bought up by one of the biggest publishers in the world. I'm glad that they went out and found additional funding so that they could stay independent, because I feel like that's kind of what makes this game so cool. It was made by a small team and got so big just because they executed so well on their premise. I've seen a lot of people guessing that this game's gonna completely die once Halo comes out, but I don't think that's the case because its biggest player base is on PS5. And you know what game PS5 doesn't have? Halo Infinite. And I also don't think people who have PS5s are the ones going out and buying Xbox Series X's. I think it's people who have PCs who might want an Xbox Series X because they can transfer saves back and forth. The point here is I don't know how many players they're gonna lose when Halo Infinite comes out, but thanks to that PS5 player base, I think they're gonna be just fine. Like, I seriously think we'll eventually start seeing some PS Plus bundles showing up where you get extra stuff in the game or something like that. And hey, we just saw Aloy come over to Genshin Impact. I want to see Kratos popping into Splitgate, and I want that baseball bat that's like a power-up where it's a one-hit kill. I want that to be Kratos' axe. Come on. Come on, 1047, do it. I dare you. I think in the near future, if you look at all the PlayStation exclusives, one of the quietest ones that's also one of the biggest is Gran Turismo 7, because while it doesn't show up on IGN and all these different YouTube channels that you mainly watch, like Skill Up or something like that, there's definitely a huge fan base for this game out there that is just waiting to play more Gran Turismo. Now, a couple months back, some Gran Turismo fans found a website that teased the beta that's coming for the game, and now we have some details of what we can expect in the final product. So according to the game's director, it's going to have real-time weather, which I think is awesome. It's going to look great on the PS5, obviously, and it's also going to have the damage models that were introduced in GT Sport. I also don't think this game's going to struggle to have an online community because there's going to be crossplay between the PS4 and the PS5, and they haven't said anything about PSVR support, but I can guarantee you that if this comes out around the same time as the PSVR 2, you're going to see some sort of support for the PSVR 2. Now, the big point of contention a lot of people have is that even if you're playing solo, you're going to have to be connected to the internet, and the director's excuse to me was kind of weak. He said it's so people don't cheat in the single player mode, which, like, it doesn't really matter if people cheat in the single player mode. I guess they could get more credits to buy cars faster, but I don't think it's particularly hard to unlock a ton of cars in Gran Turismo. It just feels like kind of a cop-out excuse to put anti-piracy stuff in the game, because obviously if you're playing single player and you need to connect to the internet, it's going to be a lot harder to play a cracked version of Gran Turismo 7. I don't want to come down too hard on the guy because obviously this is a Sony thing that they were like, hey, you need to just make it seem like it was your idea or something like that. But one way that these online features could actually play into the single player and not in a way that's just for anti-piracy is if they include the daily challenge system that's from GT Sport, where every day you log in, you have a few different challenges and you can do those. And obviously if you want to do that, you need to connect to the internet. I'm still not totally sold on it, but the idea of being able to do these challenges and unlock extra cars is kind of fun in my opinion. And the last story I have for you guys is about SSDs, because of course this brand new update gave us the ability to install our own SSD in the PS5 and expand its 825 gigabytes of storage. Now obviously this is old news at this point because everyone can go get the firmware update for the PS5 and install an SSD with a heatsink, no problem, but this is interesting because Sony has actually released a kind of official PS5 one, but they did it in the weirdest way possible. So over in Japan, Sony owns a company called Next Storage that makes SSDs, and they're making the official PS5 SSD, and it has a huge heatsink on it, but man, this thing is expensive. So these things go all the way up to
2 terabytes
of storage, which is insane. And if you want to get that
2 terabyte
version, you're going to be paying $630 for it, which will bring the PS5 total cost to like $1,100, which is absolutely insane to me. Like at that point, I don't think it's probably worth it. I think you're better off just deleting some games and keeping some space clear on your PS5, because we know the PS5's cracking technology is good enough now where updates for games are so much smaller on PS5 than Xbox. Like for example, I was just on the Iron Lords podcast over the weekend, and I'll link it down in the description, but we talked about how there's a new update for Watch Dogs Legion that's only 5 gigabytes on the PS5, but on the Xbox Series X is over 30.2 gigabytes. And that's because Sony has this cracking technology that makes updates so much smaller. And speaking of good features on the PS5, this firmware update is even better than we thought. So Digital Foundry was testing the difference between the old PS5 and the new one with the smaller heatsink that Austin and I discovered in the video over on his channel. And while they were doing their testing, they noticed that one of their PS5s was on an older firmware and one of them was on the new 2.0 firmware. And the new 2.0 one was actually running games better than the other one on older firmware. Now there's a lot of reasons why that could be the case, but the big one that I'm leaning towards is this whole thing where the PS5 can overclock itself if the game needs it to. So unlike the Series X, which is running maxed out at all times, the PS5 can kind of determine what a game needs and underclock or overclock itself accordingly. So knowing that, it makes sense that as time goes on, Sony can collect data on how games are running and improve that overclocking or underclocking of the chip with firmware upgrades. But yeah, I just thought it was really cool, and I wanted to point out that Sony is still actively improving the console as time goes on because I want them to keep doing that. Sony's always been cool about firmware upgrades, adding features like with the Vita. I remember how big of a deal it was when that console got PS1 emulation. Like, that was awesome. I ran home, I downloaded Resident Evil 2 and 3 on my Vita, and I played them all night long. It was a great night. Anyway guys, make sure you let me know what you think of all this PlayStation news down in the comments below, and remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.